All right, in the co-main, Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev. Chimaev is now a minus 200 favorite, John. Whittaker at plus 170. Praying that fight goes through. Everything has been, fine leading up to the fight. Khamzat, of course, pulled out of their original fight back in June. He was feeling sick. Much narrower odds, John, after that first fight was supposed to be played out. Rob looked really, really dangerous in that knockout versus Ikram Aliskerov. Scotty Hastings, as always, pointing out that Bobby Knuckles, his boy, is very, very undervalued. To me, Rob reminded me that he's a tough dude. I mean, he got beat hard by Dricus in the fight before. He came back and put on quite a performance. John, if you are Rob Whittaker and you are coming off this win, I mean, how much confidence do you pull from that Aliskerov fight, just knowing and proving to everybody that you can get it done, early?
I think partly it's the confidence in that fight, but really just the current form overall, the way he has responded in kind back-to-back now to the Dricus du Plessis loss is very encouraging. And I think Robert Whittaker would tell you right now, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, he's the strongest he's ever been. He's probably in the best shape of his life. Developmentally, he has continued to get better, and you can't say that for every fighter. Some fighters idle, they level out. They don't maintain the wrestling or the jiu-jitsu or certain disciplines that are key to not just overall maintenance, but development as well. And Whittaker is getting better in all phases. And yeah, I mean, handling the change of opponent in Saudi Arabia the way he did and having a quick fight that allows him to turn around and take this Chimaev fight. I don't have enough good things to say about Robert Whittaker. I remember when his birth year, 1990, was in his Twitter handle back in the day when we called his UFC debut in 2012. And even then we thought we were dealing with something special. So yeah, I mean, I think it stands to reason that if he wins here, he gets that du Plessis rematch at some point in time. Just really proud of this resurgent Roberts. And he's fighting a guy in Khamzat Chimaev who is unlike a force I've ever seen in the fight game. Robert Whittaker, at least in my time with the UFC, bro, that dates to 2011, Robert Whittaker might be the most beloved fighter of my time with the UFC. And yet he's fighting a guy in Chimaev that has no point of comparison when it comes to just overall electricity. He just doesn't compete that much.
Yeah, well, with Chimaev, I mean, could you give me one word to describe him and then maybe elaborate on that?
I just said electric. Force. He is a force, a dynamic force. No, I can't give you one word. He is enigmatic. He is polarizing. He is dynamic. He is blitzkrieg, brute force. He is unlike anything I've ever seen in the fight game. I've compared him to people like Bo Nickel, the electricity that is within an arena when Bo Nickel makes the walk because of the anticipation, or the young Raul Rosas Jr., or certainly Israel Adesanya early on. I mean, Conor McGregor, of course, right? There's just an undeniable electricity when Khamzat Chimaev fights, but he's fought just one time since UFC 279, which was 2 years ago, and it had that infamous major shakeup, right? So that one win, a majority decision over Kamaru Usman. He's now in a title eliminator. I think promotionally, they'd love to see Chimaev in a title fight, right? Because a lot of people, Dana White and others, fans, feel the way I do. Like, dude, like you just say, all right, here we go, Robert Whittaker, Khamzat Chimaev. You just start setting up the fight, and it sets off an internal reaction in me as a sports fan that it just doesn't happen when maybe you talk about 95% of the roster.
Yeah, super stoked for that one. You mentioned the Kamaru Usman fight. Personally, very excited for that one. That was a good fight. Now, here's what I saw. Khamzat is a machine in round one. You mentioned electric, you mentioned force. He comes out strong, and he had Kamaru, a decorated ex-champion, fighting for his life at basically all elements of that grappling back and forth. The fight changes a little bit in round 2 and round 3. So when I look ahead to this Whittaker fight, maybe this Whittaker-Chimaev fight goes long, maybe it doesn't. But John, I want to ask you how you think Rob's championship round experience might help him if this fight does go later into the scheduled 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a popular narrative, and I think it could help him for sure. I think that Chimaev's cardio has been questioned, rightfully so, but I also think on any given Saturday night, it could also hold up, and second wins are a real thing. And I can look at certain fights. I can look at even Whittaker against Dricus du Plessis. sometimes the damage is what does it to your cardio, right? Leon Edwards maybe wouldn't admit to you publicly that Bilal Muhammad hurt him fairly badly early on with strikes, and that was more a factor than fighting at 5:30 in the morning or any of the grappling. I mean, Leon Edwards really grappled well, right? So you just don't know how a given athlete is going to respond given the circumstances. But yes, simplistically, on paper, I do believe a longer fight would favor Robert Whittaker, who also has more experience overall in the UFC, but in this middleweight division. But dude, I mean, if you were to say to me, hey, you can put a fight together in any division, like I might write these two names down. So needless to say, one of the flights to Abu Dhabi is the longest I'll ever have been on a metal tube singularly in my life, 16 hours, 30 minutes, but I can't wait to go.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. And I'm super intrigued by that fight. And then, John, just the division in general. I mean, now between Borralho, Imavov, even Paulo Costa, Brendan Allen coming off a loss, but still, a legitimate player in that division. I mean, how much fun is middleweight right now?
It's the deepest it's ever been. And we say that with respect to the consensus greatest UFC middleweight champion, Anderson Silva, right? And others in the past who have, defended this belt against less of a murderer's row. It's absolutely crazy to think even this weekend, Michel Pereira and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, right? These guys are outside the top 10, outside the top 12, right? 13 and 14 in the world respectively. And they've combined to win their last 13. It's a hard time to be a middleweight contender. And you even have a guy in Sean Strickland, whom we all assume is going to be next, right? But Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker could factor prominently in that equation. What's going to happen when Israel Adesanya returns? Could it be in a championship setting? So there's good problems and bad problems. We just got to keep this division moving forward. And thankfully, in a lot of these divisions right now, at 85, at 70, and I think at 35, you do have champions on the men's side that, in theory, are going to spin it around every 4 months or so. And that is a promoter's dream.
Mm-hmm.